If you got a Bible, look down at Acts chapter 18. Thank you, Brandon. Doing a series on the story behind the story, just looking at stories. You've got to chase a little ways through the New Testament. Maybe they're not immediately transparent to you, but you got to look a little bit. So today I want to show you just this couple and how God used their marriage. And then next week we're going to look at Jesus' family. And some of you kind of think Jesus, he's got a mom, maybe a dad, he had brothers, and so I'm not going to preach that sermon. But anyway, next week, if your family bugs you, that's your week. You're in, and you can even look pious about it, like, hey, I'm just here to hear about Jesus and his messed up family. So come next week. Today, I just want to show you a couple, and it's really important to know that this is probably one of the most important couples in your New Testament. You don't hear a lot about them because you have to run a little bit through the New Testament to learn about them. I think what you don't know when you're young and you get married is great marriages give themselves to a cause. Great marriages are not just about each other. Great marriages are about something that's bigger than them. Last generation was asking this, what's in it for me? Current generation is asking what's bigger than me, which is the right question. What is bigger than you is the kingdom of God. But you get married and you think marriage is going to be about carriage rides. The guys don't think this, but they think marriage is going to be about carriage rides and holding hands and looking deeply into one another's eyes and finding the meaning of life. That is not marriage. You will not find for a moment you will find the meaning of that month, but the meaning of life is deeper than that. What you learn is that marriage is not just romance. It is partly romance, but it's not just romance. There is something greater that you were brought together for than romance. You were put together because you have a cause to give yourselves to. You were brought together by God for that cause. In fact, when you talk to people who got divorced, so often what people will say to me is, we went different directions. And what you mean is not, I'm a plumber, she became a librarian, we went different directions. That's not what people mean. They mean, I was giving myself to this cause, he began giving himself to this cause, and eventually we were no longer pointed toward the single cause, we were pulled in two different directions. I believe this with all my heart, that the greatest cause a marriage can give itself to is the cause of Jesus Christ. That when a marriage is pointed toward Jesus, it's not just that you go to church together and you worship together, though that's really good. It's not just that you read the Bible together, but there is something in Christ that pulls the two of you together, and you recognize that we are on mission together. And when you take the cause out of the church and you take the cause out of the marriage, church gets really boring and marriage gets really boring, and you begin hunting for somewhere else. There's got to be somewhere that's more exciting. But hear me, there is enough in Christianity to consume the whole of your life. It is absolutely phenomenal. This is me and Rebecca, our first date. We're driving and she was talking. I didn't say anything back then. None of you believe that, but kind of shy, quiet. We're driving, she's talking, right? And we're going up this, we're going up this mountain road, first date. And she's talking. And I realized two things as she talked. Kind of holding on to the steering wheel, I thought, number one, I could marry this girl and never have to say anything again. So that's good. But as we're driving, first date, she's just talking, and she says, I was a young pastor. She says, I always thought I'd be a pastor's wife. I don't know. I think that's probably what God's called me to, is probably to be a pastor's wife. And I wanted to stop, and I wanted to go, girl, this is the first date, and you're already planning to be. But you know what? I thought, that's forward. But you know what I realized? The more I got to know her, and her sweetness, her kindness, her goodness. I had a dream one time that her friends came to me and said, she's not really that nice. And I realized it's hard for me to believe that anybody could be that nice at the core. 25 years together, she never stopped being nice. But I realized if we get married, our lives are headed the same direction, because this girl is headed with all her heart toward Jesus Christ, and she loves the church of Jesus. And you meet Christians, sometimes they love Jesus but not the church. That's not going to work. Or they love the church, but they don't. I realize here's somebody that our lives are headed together on that same mission. That's what God did with Adam and Eve, is he puts them together in the garden, and he doesn't just go, all right, put you together, hang out, eat fruit, don't eat that fruit, eat fruit, have a good time, I'll check in with you later. Instead, he puts them together in a garden and he puts them on mission. Go and subdue all the earth, fill it. And isn't that what he does? He gives a marriage a mission. Well, I want to show you this couple. Their name is Aquila and Priscilla. I've got to say that over and over because I've preached more often on another couple in the Bible named Ananias and Sapphira, and they're bad. Like they got struck dead in church. And so if I say Sapphira, if I say that, just know I mean this. Anyway. Aquila and Priscilla are this just mission couple that God has put together. Let me show you Acts chapter 18. I'm going to walk a lot through Acts 18. Paul is on mission. He goes to Philippi. In Philippi, as so often happens on his missionary journeys, he is preaching. He drives out a demon. He gets thrown in prison. There's an earthquake in the middle of the night, about midnight. I promise all this is in the Bible. They're singing praises to God. There's an earthquake. Their chains fall off. The jail opens up. Paul, in a phenomenal moment of leadership, convinces the jailers to stay in jail. That's leadership. Is that right? That's kind of where the Marine Corps promotes you. When you can convince the jailers not to walk out open doors, they're like, hey, we're going to give you some extra stripes right there. But you have some gold on that. Right? Paul convinces the jailers the prisoners to stay. The jailer is confronted. He baptizes the jailer. The next day, he sails on because the town of Philippi invited him to leave. And so he goes to Thessalonica. He goes from Thessalonica to Berea. He goes from Berea. This is where it gets cool. He goes to Greece. In Greece, he goes to Athens. These are cities that you still study today. After he leaves Athens, it's phenomenal at Athens. He preaches there. Look down there at Acts 18:1. After this, Paul left Athens. By the way, while he was in Athens, he got to preach on Mars Hill. There's a famous sermon called the Sermon on Mars Hill. Tell you this, when you're a preacher and you get to preach on Mars Hill, you brag about that to other preachers. Like, yeah, I preached on Mars Hill. That's what you do. Or you just say, I preached on Mars. Did you preach on Mars? I preached on Mars. After this, Paul left Athens and he went, where'd he go? Goes to what used to be a city-state, one of the Greek city-states, Corinth. It was taken over by Julius Caesar, who made it a Roman colony. And it is just bustling with activity. There's seaports, there's markets, people are worshiping in the temples of the gods. There's a military fortress there. Everything is in just this bustling city. Well, here shows up Paul in this city. Nobody really knows about the Lord, and he's there to talk about the Lord. And, now watch this. This is where it gets good. Verse 2. He found a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, Aquila's the Jew, recently from Italy, he's specifically from Rome, with his wife, Priscilla. Priscilla is probably Roman. She's Gentile, he's Jewish. They lived in Italy, but they had to move. Now, if you're taking notes, write this down. You talk about a marriage that's on mission that's so important. A marriage on mission, number one, just looking at Aquila and Priscilla, I just noticed that they stayed sweet when life took unplanned turns. They stayed sweet when life took unplanned turns. Why are these two in Corinth? Because they're from Italy. They're from Rome. It's a short trip. Why are they over there in Corinth? Well, here's why, because they got kicked out. He found Aquila, Priscilla, verse 2, because, why are you guys in Corinth? Claudius had commanded all the Jews to leave Rome, so Paul went to see them. Pause. Claudius the emperor got fed up with all the Jews, so he kicked them out of Rome. We actually know this also from a historian, Roman historian by the name of Suetonius. And Suetonius said this. He said, Claudius banished from Rome all the Jews who were continually making a disturbance at the instigation of one, and then he misspells a name. See the name? Christius. A lot of New Testament scholars think this is one of the earliest references to Jesus outside your New Testament. This is a Roman historian who's writing, say, why did he misspell the name? Because he's Roman, he's not a Jew. And he's writing, he says, oh yeah, Claudius kicked out all the followers of this guy, Christius. Now, here's what I think. I don't think that the Roman emperor necessarily threw out all the Jews. I think he threw out a specific group or sect of Jews, and here's the group. It was the group who were followers of Christ. They lost their homes. You know why? Because Jews, the Romans could kind of tolerate. They go to temple, they do their thing. They kind of stay out of our way. But the Christians are so aggressive. They're knocking on our doors. They've got Awana. They've got VBS. They're coming up to us. They're saying stuff like, if you were to die today, do you know where you're going to go? And they're like, we're Romans. We have no idea where we're going. Stop asking us questions. Don't give us your tracts. Don't invite us to your VBS. Don't talk to us at the door. In fact, finally, Claudius just goes, get out of the city. I want all Christians out. And not Ananias and Sapphira, out they go. Priscilla and Aquila have to leave there. Well, where do they land? They go down there to Corinth. Now, I just want you to pause and think on this. If you suddenly lost your home for Jesus, if life gets difficult, that's where a lot of marriages fall apart. Lose a home. See, here's what happens. You got married, and a lot of marriages, when life takes some hard turns, that's where they break, because what was not part of your marriage plan was suffering. You did not get to somebody else and say, hey, I love you so much. Would you like to suffer with me? I think I do. Yeah, let's go suffer together. Am I right? Did any of you try that line? That is not what I said to Rebecca. Ladies, did any of the guys say to you, hey, I might lose a business. We're probably going to lose some money. Life's just going to punch me in the face. Want to come with me? Yeah. I love getting punched in the face. Let's have money trouble. I'm in. You marry because you're in love and you're overflowing with that love. But the test of marriage is when trials and troubles come, and it's all the more when it's for your faith. And you'll find some couples, that's where they get bitter, they get mean, they get hard. Have some sickness, have some financial issues. Every now and then in life, you're going to get $300 to death. You know what that is? One bill's $300, like I got it. Another bill, another bill, another bill. After a while, you're like, whoa, we're out of money. You start to get hard. In life, there's going to be some loss. You might lose a business. You might lose a home. You might lose a kid. And some couples get bitter and mean. Some break up. Aquila and Priscilla just stay sweet in the whole thing. Watch what happens when Paul meets them. Here comes, they just lost their home because of Christianity. Here comes Paul, Mr. Christian. What would you say when Paul knocked on your door? Hey, we already tried that. Not real interested. Watch this. Paul went to see them because Paul was of the same trade, and he stayed with them. Hey, come in, stay at our house. For they were tent makers by trade. I just love the way he just joins their business. Every Sabbath, Paul goes out and he's preaching the gospel. And somehow Paul and this couple just hit it off. They're making tents together. And can you imagine? Aquila and Priscilla say, we were at Pentecost and we got saved and we went through, and Paul says, well, that's incredible because I was on a road to persecute Christians, and these two just start talking. Look at chapter 18, verse 11. Paul stayed a year and a half teaching the word of God among them. He just stays at this house. And this house becomes the base of operations for a missionary outreach into the city of Corinth. What I love is instead of becoming bitter or cold or hard because of life's hard turns, they open their home up and they just stay sweet. And I think you have to look, you're going to have troubles in your marriage. It's not necessarily going to be marriage troubles. Together, you're going to go through some troubles. And it's your choice whether or not in that marriage you stir one another toward bitterness or you stir one another toward righteousness and goodness. They didn't say, man, Jesus. Paul, get out of here with your Jesus talk. We were up in Rome. We already paid a price for Jesus. We're done. But they just stayed sweet. But then the next thing I notice about this couple that are on mission is they just gave themselves deeply to the next generation. There's a generation coming up, and they're going to mentor them. Tell you what happens in Acts 18 over there at Corinth, because it's just so much fun. Paul is having tons of success in Corinth. He's going out. He's winning people to Jesus. The Holy Spirit is moving. In fact, the ruler of the synagogue gets saved. And so the synagogue ruler is saved. Lots of people are getting saved and baptized. Only people are opposing him at the same time, because where the gospel goes, the gospel is opposed. And in fact, Jesus appears to Paul in a vision. Look down there at verse 9. And Jesus has to tell Paul, hey, don't be afraid. I know they want to kill you. But no one's going to attack you. No one's going to harm you. In fact, he says, I have many in this city. I'm working, Paul. You just stay here and keep working. Eventually, the Jews get so... Can I just tell you a great short story in the New Testament? This is wonderful. This will sweep you away. The Jews get so fed up with Paul, they take him to court. We're suing you. We'll shut your church down. So they march in, but now here's the great part. It's not a Jewish court they're going to go to. They take him to Roman court. The leader of the Jews is a guy named Sosthenes. Isn't that a great name? Sosthenes. Any of you looking for a baby named Sosthenes? Just try it out. It'll be the only one named Sosthenes. They march into court. The Roman judge is sitting there. It's called a tribunal, but it's small claims court. They go in there and they're bringing their charges. Sosthenes and the Jews say, this guy, he breaks the Roman law, he does this, and he does this, and he does this. And after a while, the judge is like this, And here's why. He doesn't care. He's not Jewish. He's like, does any of this have to do with Roman law? Did he break a Roman law? No, but he. And after a while, then what do you think the judge did? He went all Judge Judy on him. He went, hey, you get out of my courtroom. What are you doing in my courtroom? And I'll just read it to you out the Bible because you think I'm kidding. Where is it? Look at verse 16. I like it. Oh, wow, it's stronger than I said it. He drove them from the tribunal. It gives the idea of the judge rising off the judge's seat and saying, get out of my court. So out they go. All the Jews going out one way with Sosthenes. Paul goes out the other way. What happens outside the courtroom is hilarious. The Jews start beating up their leader, Sosthenes. I'll just read it. Did you know the Bible was this good? He drove them from the tribunal, they, the Jews, seized Sosthenes, the leader of the synagogue, and beat him in front of the tribunal. Bam! Jeez, you man. They start beating him up. Now, here's the wonderful thing. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 1, Paul is writing back to Corinth, to the church there. He says, Paul, called to be an apostle of Jesus Christ, and our brother, Sosthenes. Well, there's only one Sosthenes like on planet Earth that I know of. Question. Earlier, Sosthenes was suing Paul. Then next time you see, Sosthenes is a leader in the church at Corinth. When did Sosthenes come to Jesus? I don't know when exactly, but I have a slight suspicion that it may have happened about the time his other church beat him up and left him bleeding, and he kind of thought, I don't like going to church here anymore. In fact, I think I need to find a new church. I gotta want to learn about this Jesus guy. And isn't that the best short story ever? Well, Paul eventually leaves Corinth, and when he leaves, so he's starting this church. Sosthenes is a member, Aquila, Priscilla are members. There's just this church that's forming there. Well, when he leaves, he takes Aquila and Priscilla with him. He's headed on out to Syria, but they're going to stop in Ephesus, and that Priscilla and Aquila are going to stay in Ephesus for a while. Look at Acts 18:18. Paul set sail for Syria, and with him, here's another mention of this couple, Aquila and Priscilla. Well, Aquila and Priscilla, they stay in Ephesus. Paul goes on to Syria, and no surprise, they've got some money. They have a house in Ephesus. Maybe they bought a house, and they start a church in Ephesus. Paul starts this church, but this church starts meeting in their house. You ever gotten any encouragement from the book of Ephesians? It went to their house. The postman that dropped off the book of Ephesians knocked on Aquila's door and said, hey, we have a letter to you from the Apostle Paul. Well, the story follows the Apostle Paul until verse 24, and you're going to meet who shows up in Ephesus, where Aquila and Priscilla are, is a guy by the name of Apollos. That's a very Greek name. Look at chapter 18, verse 24. Now a Jew named Apollos, a native of Alexandria, came to Ephesus. Everybody goes through Ephesus, I promise. Now it describes his preaching. He was an eloquent man, competent in the scriptures. And he was instructed in, I love it that all through chapter 18, Christianity is called the way. Isn't that a great name for Christianity? As in, this is the way? Never mind. Because the way is not Mandalore, the way is Jesus Christ. I'll just read this here. He's been talking about Apollos, that said he had been instructed in the way. He was a follower of Jesus, of the Lord. And Being fervent in spirit, it means he was fiery. He spoke and taught accurately the things concerning Jesus. Now, here's a weird thing. Though he only knew the baptism of John. Wait, what? But when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, what would you do? Your old spiritual leader is the Apostle Paul. The sermons are slightly theologically deep. You go, you fill the bulletin with notes when Paul preaches. Then this new guy shows up, and like doctrinally, he's kind of wrong on some stuff. Were you baptized? What do you do when the new guy wasn't even baptized in Jesus' name? What do they do? It says this, though he knew only the baptism of John, when Priscilla and Aquila heard him, what do you think they did? He ain't no Paul. Put clips of him on YouTube. False teacher comes to Ephesus. I think they kind of had secret meetings. We got to talk about the new guy. I think they posted pictures of him. In the last days, there'll be false teachers, and here it is, Apollos. Go to lunch. I don't know about the new guy. I don't think he can take me as deep as I need to go. In fact, I think I know more Bible than he knows. What's the Bible actually say they did? Did they lose their mind on the new guy, the less discipled guy? Here's what the power couple does. They took him aside. Hey, boy, come here. Let's talk. And they explained the way of God more accurately. Can you imagine? This is beautiful. This couple take him aside and say, can we just pour into you a little bit? You want to talk about a great couple? A great couple's not only on mission to go out there and change the world, it's to pour into the next generation. To fall in love. Look, if you're getting older and there's some gray hairs, there should be something in you that absolutely loves the young people coming up in the church. I'm so happy when I see people following, any of you following Jesus that are young. Thank God for, I don't know, it blesses me. But he said, I'd like to be that couple. We'd like to be that couple that pour into other. You know how you get there? You have to know your Bible. Because there is no way for you to pour into Apollos if your own bucket's empty. The only way for you to pour into Apollos is if you and Aquila, you and Priscilla have read and read and read and talked the Bible. And as you've talked and you've read in your marriage, God has filled and filled and filled that bucket. And then when you meet new young Christians, you've got something to pour out. And the reason some Christians cannot pour into the next generation is because they have nothing to pour because their own spiritual bucket is empty. What my marriage did for me over and over and over was she was part of pouring into me as we poured in together and we learned about Jesus. Hey, here's a great idea. Just give you a marriage idea. You need to be reading your Bible. Amen? We got you don't have to do this. It's just what we did. We got a marriage Bible. And some of you are already on Amazon. Where's it? No, hold on. It was just a regular Bible with big margins on the sides. And we would just write notes back and forth in the marriage Bible. Nobody else read it. And one day, one person would take this. So if we were reading through Acts, one day it was her turn, next day it was my turn. We'd read the same passage and write notes back and forth in the Bible. And she'd circle something and go, what's that mean? And I'd write a little note over there. And I'd circle something. What do you think that means? Or underline it. Hey, did you notice this over here in Ephesians? It connects to this thing. And we would just write these notes. And sometimes they weren't even great. They weren't deep notes. Sometimes we were just reading the Bible and say, hey, spaghetti dinner last night was awesome. And she'd write a note on that, right under that. It goes, yes, it was. And we just write, because what we found, we were the generation that started out writing notes, like handwritten notes to each other. And then we got cell phones, and it was awesome. And we were talking all the time, right? But we found that we missed the writing. And it really benefited us to actually have to slow down and write notes to one another. And we just chose our Bible as the place to do. Anyway, I'm just saying this. You need to have your bucket full in your marriage, full of the Lord, so that you can pour out to other generations, so you can give to them. If you and him aren't together and aren't one, your bucket's not full. And there should be a sense that in Christ, you're together and you're walking together as a married couple, and that bucket isn't just a little bit full, but it's overflowing. And when you meet young Christians, you can't wait to pour out toward them the Word of God. What's the result? Look down there at verse 27. Apollos goes to Acacia, but he's got some changes. Apollos greatly helped those who through grace had believed. He powerfully refuted the Jews in the public showing of the scriptures that Christ was Jesus. How's he able to, what happened to Apollos? Somebody discipled him. Somebody grew with him. I don't know who discipled you. I had a whole church of people disciple me because, I was young when I became a pastor. Remember a couple named Marjorie and Russell Tuck, and she came to the church. He was the president of California Baptist University. I remember the day he sat across the desk and said, I want you to go to this college because you've got so much to give the world. That kind of builds into you. But she came to the church, and she would sit and she would take notes. She was a graduate of Vanderbilt and Duke. She was smart. Take notes, and she taught us. She taught us Sunday school, and I would go in there, and I'd just take as many notes as I could. And she just mentored me. I remember one time she wrote me a note that said, Dear David, you cannot holler the entire sermon. Some of you don't know this. You're like, wow, he's like a monkey on stage. I used to be more passionate. People would leave church. They'd be like, what'd he say? We don't know, but he was excited. I was all passion, no content. Took Vanderbilt to pull me aside. Go, David. And this couple, what was so cool? He was the president of Cal Baptist, but she was right there mentoring young people with him. And that couple used every role they had to pour in to the next generation. I just ask you guys this. Ask this into your marriage. Who are you pouring into? Who? Because you say, I want to do that. Okay, who? Hey, just tell you as a pastor, one of the reasons we have for children age-graded Sunday school, but we don't take all the seniors and put them in one room, and then we take all the young people. You know what? We have a men's group. Take the old guys and the young guys, put them in the same room. We have a women's group. We take the old lady. There are no old ladies. But anyway, you take the senior. I give up. Because it's crazy to me to take all the wisdom and go, okay, you guys, shut the door. All right, all you guys new to the faith, you're in here. We don't know why anybody's growing. Because you got to take the old people and the young people and put them together in the church, which is what we're seeking to do. All right. You know what else they did? This couple were generous with their resources. They not only poured into that next generation. About 10 years after their trip to Ephesus, they're back in Rome. So track the progression. They had a house in Rome. They got kicked out of Rome. They went to Corinth. They went from Corinth to Ephesus. They go from Ephesus, where they train Apollos. Claudius is gone, and they're able to go back up to Rome. They go home to Rome. What would you do when you got home? I'm not giving my house anymore. That's a good way to get kicked out of the city. Look at Romans chapter 16, verse 3. It's the next place you find this couple. You ever find encouragement from the book of Romans? Watch who it's addressed to. Where do you think, I'll try not to get excited because you can't holler the whole sermon, but where do you guys think the church at Rome was meeting? The house of Aquila. Hold on, I'll just read it to you. You get a pass. You got one less hour of sleep. So, what is it? 16:3. Greet Prisca. That means Priscilla. Prisca is kind of the formal name. Priscilla is the sweet name. Same woman. Greet Prisca and Aquila, my fellow workers in Christ Jesus. Who, I love this line, who risks their necks for my life. What happened? It doesn't say. When I get to heaven, I'm going to check the video. Something happened where they put their life on the line for Paul. I don't know what it was. Greet Aquila and Prisca, who risked their life, their necks for my life. To whom not only I give thanks, but the churches of the Gentiles give thanks as well. All over the world, the Gentile world, people have been blessed by this couple. And greet also the church in their house. Where do you think the church at Rome was meeting? In the house of Priscilla and Aquila. Ever been encouraged by the book of Romans? Slightly. The postman knocked on the door of Priscilla and Aquila and dropped off the book of Romans because the church was meeting in their house. And I love the way you'd be tempted after you lost greatly. You lost your home in the past. You'd be kind of like, we're just playing it safe now. We're staying away from the Jesus thing. Jesus will get you in trouble. It's going to be financially safe. We're going to get home. They get home, and they like, man, our house is open to the Lord. We're never going to stop giving to the Lord. We're never. And you know what good couples do? Good couples pull each other forward. Know what I mean? Emotionally, spiritually. Bad couples, how do I say this? Bad couples stir each other up. You don't know why you let them talk to you that way. You just have a lot to say. Don't let them treat you like they just embitter each other. You ever see a couple, they just feed off each other and they're always pulling each other down. I love the way Priscilla and Aquila, the names go back and forth. Sometimes it's Aquila and Priscilla, sometimes it's Priscilla and Aquila. Know why? Because sometimes one is running a little bit ahead. Come on, Aquila, come on. And sometimes it's, come on, Priscilla, come on. And they're always pulling each other toward generosity. They're always pulling each other toward giving more to the Lord. I want to be like that. Some of you are like, I want to be like that. One last thing about this couple that's just phenomenal. And that is they just joined God anywhere God was at work. They never gave up. So pause, because time goes by in your New Testament and you're not aware of time passing. But like today, people back then aged and started getting older. So about another 10 years go by from Romans. It's about AD 66, 67. Aquila and Priscilla are getting old. He's starting to lose his hair and get that spot right there. And Paul writes his final letter. Paul is a captive in Rome. He's in a dungeon in a Roman prison. Question, where do Priscilla and Aquila live? Rome. What's interesting when we get to 2 Timothy, Paul is getting ready to die. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 19, Paul says something interesting. Here's what you got to know. Timothy is back in Ephesus. Remember Ephesus? Remember Apollos? Remember all the stuff that was going on there? In fact, there had almost been a riot there that when the entire town shouted, "Great is Artemis, God of the Ephesians," and they had to hold back Paul from going out there. That's Ephesus. Aquila and Priscilla had been in Ephesus at once upon a time. They came back to Rome. Now Paul in a Roman dungeon, he's getting ready to die. He writes what's probably his last letter, 2 Timothy. And it's headed to Ephesus, and it says this. 2 Timothy 4:19. Greet Priscilla and Aquila. Wait. Priscilla and Aquila aren't in Rome with Paul. Priscilla and Aquila, who are old now, have picked up stakes, and they're back in Ephesus. What happened? They're with Timothy. I don't quite know the way it went down, but I can imagine it. Paul's talking to them, and he says, I'm just praying so hard for Timothy. Ephesus is hard ground. Every now and then they'll fill a stadium and call for your death. Aquila and Priscilla are like, well, yeah, we had a house there. We talked to Apollos. And at some point, there's a marriage conversation. Maybe it didn't quite go down like that. Maybe they're in the dungeon talking to Paul, and Timothy comes in. Hey, Paul. Paul says, I've got a mission for you. I need you to go to Ephesus and go preach the gospel there because there's a church there that needs a pastor. And Timothy's like, yes, I'm on it, I'll go. And out he goes. But at some point, these two look at each other, whether Timothy's already there or he's on his way out of there. And they go home, and that night they start talking. And one says to the other, we can't let that kid go alone down to Ephesus. We've been there. It's crazy over there. I don't know, one may be looking for a security more than the other one. Yeah, but if we go, we're getting old and we're going to be a little far from the doctors. We're not going to know anybody out there. It's crazy over there. And the other one says, yeah, but we can't. We can't leave them alone. And there's that moment that there's a little bit of a spark in her eyes or a little bit of a spark in his eyes. He says, Priscilla, let's do it. One more time, let's give all to Jesus. Or she looks at him and she says, Aquila, baby, all this time we've chased Jesus. Let's not settle down now and dig our roots too deep. Let's pick up everything. We know Ephesus. Let's go support that kid. And this couple in their elderly years pick up everything. And when Timothy's out there in Ephesus preaching the gospel, there's an old couple out there teaching Sunday school and loving those people and helping build a church at Ephesus. Because anywhere that God was at work, here's a couple that said, it doesn't matter how old we get, we're in. We're in. I want that to be me. I want that to be me. Hey, can I tell you how to choose a spouse? That's not the title of the sermon, but If you're looking for a spouse, if you're married, you're not, so. That's what you do. Singles, you start running as hard and as fast as you can toward Jesus Christ. I mean, you run. And when you take off out of that gate toward Jesus, there are a group of people that are running right beside you. Ladies, there's some guys that as you go, they're running beside you toward Jesus. Guys, there's some girls and they're running toward Jesus. They'll tell you on the first date they're going to be pastors' wives. And they're just running. This is what I want you to do. Pick up the pace. Start running faster and harder. Because as you run harder toward Jesus, as you go further on mission, the pack starts to thin down. You find those ones that really love the Word of God, that really love the mission of Jesus. They don't just love Jesus when the spotlight's on them. They're hungry for the authentic moving of God. And you're just running. Hey, ladies, you go on a date, and he says, I just love the Lord too. I love him too. Just say to him, so what do you think of the book of Habakkuk? And just see what he says. Habakkuk what? I think we should see other people. Eventually, as you're running, that pool gets smaller and smaller. But those people that you engage with, those are the ones you start to fall for. And it's not enough for you. Hey, romantic love is great. Song of Solomon, it's great. But you got to have more than romance. You got to have mission and purpose that you're running together toward. And that's who you find that you're going to marry are people that are running toward Jesus. It's not just some Christian rule that says, okay, only marry, okay, so we all get in line, we're only going to marry Christians. It's the Bible saying this. How are you going to have a Lord that's running, and you're running hard toward your Lord, and they're running hard toward the world? You are not on the same mission. When the Bible says marry other believers, what it says is find people on mission with you, and that's your group, that's your people, because the two of you are going to run hard toward Jesus, and sometimes she's going to run a little ahead of you guys, and sometimes he's going to run a little ahead, and like Aquila and Priscilla and Aquila, they run back and forth like this, but you're always moving toward Jesus. So I just ask you to do this week in your, just take some time together in your marriage, married people. And I just wrote down some questions to just ask each other. I just want for you to think about these questions. I want you to ask each other, are we joining God where he's at work? Because some of you got to 29 Palms and you're like, it doesn't look like vacation land, but you're taking a vacation spiritually. And we'll catch up with God when we get to North Carolina, south of whatever. One of these days, we're going to follow the Lord. God's at work right here. You joining God where he's at work? How generous are you toward the work of Christ? Do you pull each other toward generosity, or do you push each other toward just being secure and safe? Let me ask you guys this. Are you investing in the next generation? Do you even know them? I don't like it, right? That's, you know what happens when you don't invest in the next generation? You got any really good friends that are younger than you? You know what happens when you don't have any friends that are younger than you? There's nobody that you're pouring into. Your walk starts to get stale and you start to get a little cranky and you just want them to get off your rock lawn. Get off my lawn, right? You ever see couples, though, that they're pouring all the time? Hey, guys, one of the things we have to protect ourselves as we get older is from grouchiness. Amen. It's just quiet in here. All the young people just went like that, and all the old people went, right? Now we protect ourselves from grouchiness. We stay on mission with Jesus, and we see a young generation coming up, and instead of going, I hate your music, I can't stand this, or I can't stand that, we say this: thank God for a generation rising up that will take the cross and carry it forward. Thank God for young people who are going to move forward. And I don't want to criticize them. I want to be the first to disciple them. I want to be the first to pour into them. And I want to, you know what we are as a church? We're a church of people that just pour and pour and pour into young people. Am I right? One of the goals of a church. Got any other questions, Pat? Yeah. Are you in the Word together? Get a marriage Bible. Somehow you two get in because you cannot pour out of an empty bucket. You fill that bucket. Hey, I want to know this. In your marriage, is your goal stability or purpose? Because those are two different things. If your goal is just to be stable, make money, have a 401k, you can do that, but you can't do that with Christ. Because God is dangerous and you serve a dangerous God. And God is not worried about our safety. God is sending us on mission. Look, even my death is not a problem for God because he raises the dead. David, go here. They might kill me. It's okay. I'll raise you. Oh, you're dangerous. Christians say stuff like this. We go, the safest place to be is the center of God's will. Are you crazy? The most dangerous place to be is the center of God's will. We have a dangerous God. And the reason church gets boring is because we're looking for stability and God's given us purpose. Let me ask you this, just to young Christians. Are you purposely bringing older people into your life? Are you welcoming them? Because if older people, when they're not pouring into younger people, get stale and grouchy, what happens to young people when they don't have old people in their life is they become unstable. And they don't have anybody to instruct them. And sometimes you need some instruction like Apollos did about baptism. And sometimes you need some instruction that, hey, hear me, if you're young, you don't know everything there is to know about the Bible. We're all still growing together, and there are people that are miles ahead of you that would love to pour into you. But here's my encouragement to you, church. Run hard toward Jesus. Amen. You single? Run toward Jesus. You married? Want to have a great marriage? Run toward Jesus. Is it safe? No. But it's full of purpose.
Thank you for listening to the sermon. For further information or to get in contact with our church's ministries, please visit us at palmsbaptistchurch.com.